MGNAC UK is delighted to announce that we will be taking part in the new government scrappage scheme. We would heartily endorse anyone who wishes to bring a rather creaky old 15-year-old car and swap it for... Oh, damn.
Gareth Jones on speed!
Hello and welcome to the On Speed Show. He's Richard Porter.
Hello.
He's Zog.
Hello.
And I'm not Gareth Florence Jones, because at the start of the Monaco Grand Prix, which the three of us had just watched round at Richard's flat, I said, if Jensen doesn't win this race, I will change my middle name to Florence. So I'm not Gareth Florence Jones. It looked like a dead cert that it was going to do that, didn't it, gentlemen?
It did, but if you carry on making bets like that, you know, you're not going to be hanging on to that middle name for all that much longer. You know, never.
Technically, though, your middle name is Jennifer, back from when the Australian Grand Prix all those years ago, where you said if Nigel Mansell doesn't win this, and then tyre's gone. Oh no! Oh, he's not world champion.
And I'm lumped
Gareth
with the name Jennifer. Florence would be an improvement, really, wouldn't it? Actually, I'm prepared to say that I may change my middle name to Gareth Florence Jones if Jensen doesn't win this World Championship this year. The way that it's going.
And I would be so much more impressed if you'd made that bet, 4 months ago. I'd have been impressed.
But I wouldn't have said it.
I wouldn't take that bet now.
But when you win 5 races out of the first 6 of the season, and one of them's Monaco, when I wasn't expecting him to be so good around Monaco, I thought Ruby would be doing better than him in Monaco, because he's good, isn't he, Ruby? Yeah,
Ruby?
Ruby, baby.
Where did this come? Was this
it's Rubens Barrichello's Jewish brother, Ruby. Ruby Barrichello. I drive the car already.
Yeah, but Button hasn't been great up to Monaco on the whole, has he? But I was inclined to agree. I think that if it was going to be Brawn on pole, it would have been Barrichello. But looks very much like that. Maybe it's the extra confidence he's got. I don't know. But Jensen had it, and once he was on pole, very hard to see anything happening to stop him winning the race. Ross Brawn is not the man who's likely to make a tactical mistake.
No, that's true. It wasn't a great race, though, Rich, was it? Really?
Not
a race per se.
It just got a bit. I drifted off after a certain point, but it was mainly because I think we were talking about this before the race, so we thought that if Raikkonen used his curves to good effect, he could get a good start and it could be all over. But the Brauns just moved away and stayed moved away until I think Barrichello was told to look after his tyres.
And the other thing is, I think we were potentially robbed of a more interesting race by Hamilton messing up in qualifying and starting from the back. If he had got third or fourth on the grid, I think we could have seen a much more interesting race.
I wasn't aware that Lewis had actually done any damage to his nose, but it seems in that jostling with Kubica in the first couple of laps, he knocked his car around, but putting the new nose on the car made a big difference for him. But really, we were willing him up that grid, please get into a position where at least you might get 1 point, but it wasn't going to happen at all, was it? But he seemed a lot more cheerful at the end of this race.
Yeah, and yes, it's weird, because what it seemed during the race was that normally he's one of those drivers who's a fighter in the Schumacher mould, where no matter how lousy the car, no matter how down on his luck he is, he will fight through the pack and he will deliver a performance that you'd think a lot of drivers would just give up. At the other extreme, I suppose, the Jarno Trulli syndrome, where you just get a bit bored on about lap 19 and go, oh God, I've been here already, can't be bothered with this anymore, and your pace goes right off. Hamilton's the absolute converse of that, where he will just fight and try and drag a lousy car up through the field, and he didn't seem to do so much of that. I don't know, we didn't see so much of his race, but that's what it seemed like. And yet the strange thing is that you didn't see him fighting, but then after the race you saw him being quite sanguine about what happened, whereas previously it had been the exact opposite. He'd have fought really hard and then expressed great disappointment in the post-race interviews.
That's true, although Monaco is a circuit where it's so much harder to fight through the field. You can get bottled up behind just one car for so long. Maybe it's harder to be inspired to do it when there's so much less prospect.
Can I broaden the subject a little bit from Monaco at the moment to the other stuff that was going on around Monaco in the build-up? The constant meetings between the FOTA and the FIA and Max and all that about the future of F1 at the moment. from my opinion, F1's pretty darned exciting at the moment. It's pretty good. Even if it is, as Bernie said himself before the start of the race, well, it's a bit boring, isn't it? The same person winning all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Bit boring in a good way.
What was doubly... apologies if you weren't watching the BBC coverage of the Formula One because you're not in the UK or something, but the Brundle's grid walk, he encountered Jerry Halliwell and she was drivelling nonsense about Formula One generally. But now I wouldn't say I've met Jerry Halliwell, but I've been in the same room as her when we had her on Top Gear, and she is microscopically small. I was saying to you two before we started recording that she's like a sort of 5/8 scale model of a human being. It's bizarre. She's all in proportion, but just that she looks like she's slightly further away than she actually is. Now, I'm prepared to accept that she was probably wearing some heels or something, but nonetheless, she was notably taller than Bernard Ecclestone, which gives you some perspective on how absolutely almost invisible to the naked eye that man is.
And therefore probably why he's so powerful. Small man syndrome.
Small man
Got to
syndrome.
make up for
yes.
it, you know.
Yeah. I'm 6'3" and I wield no power whatsoever. I'm busy being tall.
You say Jerry Halliwell is a 5/8 scale model of a full-size Jerry Halliwell. I think it probably... The measurements were done in kilometres rather than miles.
Yes, so she's like 0.62 version of... That's so geeky. Oh, 0.62.
So to come back... Well, we've all done the fuel conversions when we're working it out in the car. So to bring it back to the other stuff that's going on with F1 at the moment, the big threat, and we've mentioned it before in the programme, is that Ferrari will not be in F1 in 2010. Okay.
Ferrari and others.
And others,
Renault, Toyota, plenty of other teams.
If they don't turn up for the season next year, I'm going to change my name to Gareth Florence Big Bum Willy Poo Jones.
Wow, the Deed Poll people are going to be busy. Another form from Gareth Jones.
They will be there, won't they?
Yes.
Won't they? Of course they will, yeah.
Do you know what they said as well last week, I think, or the week before? They said, do you know, it's important to us to be in Formula One. They're so pompous, aren't they, about this? They said it's so important to be in Formula One because unlike other manufacturers, what we do in Formula One directly informs our road cars. It makes our road cars better now. And I actually talked to the Ferrari road car PR man this week about something else, and I'd written a column in Evo magazine saying that motorsport involvement and the claim that it improves road cars is always nonsense, and that it really, really doesn't have any effect. And Ferrari are very, very chippy about this, and their PR man said, we would like you to come to the factory sometime and see how our Formula One team actually makes our road cars better. But my theory is that if they spent the money that they would save from pulling out of Formula One to make their road car better, it would have the same effect, and therefore this argument is still essentially useless.
You may be right about that.
I was going to say something else. I was going to say the word that, in fact, Eddie Jordan said on the BBC Formula One coverage, which I believe was bollocks.
Although the actual word he used was bollocking, of course.
Yes, he did,
and
yes.
maybe on some technical note, he would argue that's not quite as bad as saying bollocks on the BBC.
I don't know. If you go on the BBC intranet, we've talked about this before, haven't we? But if you go on the BBC intranet, there's a list of swear words and how bad they are.
But if you're Irish, you can say bollocks.
Bollocks.
Because it means a different thing.
With an IX at the end.
Yeah, and it also means a different thing. It was a bollocks. It means it didn't go right. It was not a pair of testicles with a scrotal sack, which is what you could have said. Listen, while we're talking about...
just to go back to what you said about the Ferrari point. You may be right about that, but at least Ferrari does have... There is a real connection between what they do in racing and what they do with the road cars in a way that there really isn't for most of the teams. Basically the history of Ferrari is that they started making road cars
to make money to fund the thing.
Well,
that's fine, but now pull out, what in a delicious irony, pull out of Formula One in order to spend more money on the road cars. I appreciate it wouldn't work like that because obviously you don't get sponsorship for doing road cars, but nonetheless...
And Ferrari, more than anybody else, they need to have that kind of aura that being a successful racing manufacturer generates in order to make their cars work in people's minds.
Which is why they aren't going anywhere.
Well,
they're just waving their arms around and making...
I don't know how good your F1 history is, but do you remember the last time Ferrari actually pulled out Formula One?
It was when they changed the engine rules, was it not? 1956?
I think it was later than that. I think it was 60 something. But yes, they were talking about bringing in a smaller engine next year, and it's outrageous. We must have
the big V12. We don't want to do silly small engines.
And they said we will not turn up for the next race. And Ferrari didn't turn up for the next race. although there were Ferraris who started that race. They were the same cars, it was the same people running the team. They weren't painted red, they were painted blue with a white pair of white stripes down the middle. It was Ferrari Dealers of America who magically brought a team
What are the chances of that? What a coincidence! But that's quite interesting as well, because remember when everyone went to V10s?
Yeah.
And Ferrari made a big old fuss then. It was when old man Enzo was still alive to keep a V12, and they were the only ones. What year was that? They were still running a V12.
John Lacey was there, so it was before Schumi went there. It would have been 90... No, later than that, I'd say.
I think it was
91, I would say, or thereabouts.
Okay.
Yeah, thereabouts. Hey,
We should check this stuff, shouldn't we?
Hey,
Right in.
You will. We know you'll check it.
Yes.
We'll know you'll check it. So, listen, the future of F1 next year, Adrian Campos running a team instead of Ferrari. I don't know. A Lola, perhaps. Or that, Lightspeed. The F3 team alleged to be putting a Formula 1 bid in. You, mate.
Well, it's quite interesting, this, isn't it?
A lot of it is interesting in a sort of, this can't possibly... I don't know. A lot of the teams that are being discussed look a lot more like kind of straw men probably than real teams. At the same time, that I think it would be very interesting to see a lot of the teams that we're talking about coming into the sport. Realistically, can you see the sport in 2010 being, Lola versus Lightspeed versus Lotus, with no Ferrari, no Renault, no Toyota?
Well, exactly. I suppose they must have looked at the British touring cars and gone, oh my God, this is a bit dismal this year, isn't it, when there's only one factory team in it and they're pulling out, and it's I mean, there's somehow not as exciting.
There's clearly a lot of brinksmanship going on, and I don't know. It's a bit like the thing with the medal system and the winners deciding world championship thing that was talked about.
Yeah.
Well, Bottom would have already won the championship this year if that was the case, wouldn't it? Practically.
Well, yes. When that idea was floated, and it's still out there. You had that feeling this is something that's being put forward and promoted in order to get something else. That's not actually the real agenda, and a lot of what's going on at the moment in terms of discussion about the rules and governance. Okay, there is a real struggle for power there, but in a way, you just sort of want to close my eyes and wake up when they just settled it all, and we can get this particular circus over.
Pronto, Ferrari F1?
Hello, it's Max Moses.
What do you want now?
New regulations proposal for you. From now on, all drivers to wear moose antlers on their helmets, okay?
No, it's not okay. It's totally ridiculous. It's an insult to the great history of Ferrari. If this proposal goes ahead, we will withdraw from the sport.
I see. Well, what if we compromise? The FIA will drop the moose antlers thing as long as you're okay with the 40 million budget cap.
Okay, it's a deal. Oh, fafakul.
Meanwhile, at the Nürburgring. This is most amusing. You people from Nissan, you are losers. Our 911 GT2 is the fastest car on the Nürburgring.
I must humbly suggest that you esteemed Porsche engineers are talking complete bollocks. The GTR V-Spec is the new fastest car on the Nordschleife.
This is substantially incorrect. Your judgment of the start and finish positions is most inefficient.
And your use of semi-slick tires is most ungentlemanly.
You are simply a bad loser because the glorious 911 is the faster car.
You are unable to accept that we have built an honorably superior vehicle.
Right. There's only one way to solve this.
You mean...
Yeah.
Well, I have the laser tape measure here.
So, after 3, cocks on the table.
Gareth Jones on speed with sniff petrol. It's ever so slightly rude sometimes.
About halfway through the Monaco Grand Prix, I look around the room to see that I am in fact the only person watching the TV in the room, that Zog and Richard were both on their Apple PowerBooks doing some... How do you pronounce it? Appley Macintosh, is that right?
Appley Macintosh. I think we then decided sounds like an American law firm of some sort. Spokesman for Appley Macintosh said there would be further job losses.
No, we'll get to what you were doing on yours in a moment. Zog, you were on the BBC Red Button, live timing.
I was looking at the live timing from the Formula 1 website.
Which is very useful.
It's a very handy.
Yeah, we love live timing. Last time we watched the race, my son was leaning over your shoulder and was calling out the times as we were getting it live.
Yeah.
And it was a bit sharper than than the commentary on the BBC, I have to say.
Really?
Yeah, he was great. He was there.
Wow.
Richard, you were twittering.
Yes. I'm slightly embarrassed about this because it's kind of it's one of those fads, isn't it? It's an internet fad. But the backstory is that I was aware of Twitter and I'd always failed to see the point of it. And I don't think, if it's a personal Twitter thing, I just think, what do people do? I've just brushed my teeth. Oh, I've just gone and bought some cheese, and then inexorably you're going to get to a point where people are twittering like, I'm at a funeral, or I've just had sex, or I am actually having sex now, and things like that.
I am twittering.
Yes, I am twittering. Exactly, it'll start to eat itself. But then I realised something, which is that I thought, well, I should probably register the twitter.com/sniffpetrol name, just because...
you don't want anyone else?
I don't want anyone else to have it.
Yeah, of course.
Not for any particular reason, except that what if the person who bags it is a massive racist or something, and because this happened on... There's a website called pistonheads.com, which I'm sure people are probably aware of, and it has a massive forum, message board, whatever.
Good forums, yeah.
And there was a guy on there whose username was sniffpetrol. And I sort of vaguely challenged him about this because I'm on there, but my username isn't Sniff Petrol. And said, why did you have this? And he went, oh, well, just because it was free and I like your website. And I was like, well, it's quite flattering in a way, but it's also quite strange, And it's like, well, what bbc.co.uk/news might be free. Moira Stewart might be a free username, but I wouldn't take it because that might lead people to think that you're that person and not who you actually are. And this came to pass because... My friend Big John was toying with buying an Opel Monza that was advertised on Pistonheads.
Oh, hang on. Opel Monza, that big old 3-litre coupe based on the Commodore, really. It was Senator.
The whole family, yeah.
I always looked. I nearly bought one once.
Did you?
Oh,
well, you should speak to Big John. He's got about 5 of them.
Love them.
And he decided he needed another one. And it was being discussed on Pistonheads, and it was advertised on there. And Big John waded in and said, oh, I'm thinking of buying this car. And then I was talking to Big John, sort of later than this, didn't know anything about this Pistonheads thing, and he said, I've bought another Opel Monza. And I went, you've got loads, John, you don't need another one. He went, well, you encouraged me. I went, no, I didn't. He went, yeah, you did, on Pistonheads, Sniff Petrol. So you said, yeah, go for it. It's like, John, that's not me. So, although the guy who was using the Sniff Petrol username wasn't, thankfully, a massive racist or espousing unacceptable views of some other description in the name of my website, he did make my friend Big John buy an Opel Monza that he didn't need. So, thankfully, Mr. Sniff Petrol on Pistonheads has now changed his username to Sniff Diesel. Hello, if you're listening, by the way, thanks for that. That's fine, but I thought, same logic, better bag the Twitter thing to stop someone else using it for the purposes of, I don't know what, making John buy more cars he doesn't need.
Wish I'd done that before that bloke registered gaztop.com. There's a website. Oh, yeah, there's some snowboarder who calls himself Gaztop. Yeah. It's not fair, is it?
Not fair. Well, he'll probably die in a horrible
hard to get
this accident. So yes.
By the by, see, you've got a presence in the world of Twittering thanks to Sniff Petrol.
And I suddenly thought, well, hang on a minute, I'll start doing stuff with this, see what happens. So, and I swear, within an hour or so of registering the name, I had 30 followers as this sort of people don't know,
or stalkers.
I don't know. No. So I started writing essentially, and you can only use 140 characters. It's actually a more restrictive form of text messaging, which I think is 160 characters on an old phone.
Maybe, yeah.
And so I started doing this, and it seemed to work. And then one day I was watching the Grand Prix, and I started just commenting on what was going on, and I got more and more followers, and more, and I was sort of up to I can't remember now. It's 1,700, something like that. Or 1,200.
It's a reasonable amount.
It's a reasonable amount. It's not Ashton Kutcher or Stephen Fry, but it's it's sort of respectable for a shonky little British website. So I've carried on doing it, and then so we were watching the Monaco Grand Prix, and I'm twittering away in the corner. And
give us an example for those who haven't followed the twitter.com/Sniff Petrol. It's not a site, is it? It's a page, I suppose. Channel, a feed. Thank you. Then
sorry, what are my beer ice cream over there? You never put a bottle of beer in the freezer, ladies and gentlemen. It turns into a sort of a 99.
That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. We'll show a picture of that on the website, I think. That's quite something. But I digress. If you haven't followed the site, these are the sorts of things that you get. Can we go in sort of time order? Let's start with your first update from the race today.
Drivel nonsense thing that I've actually written. I just started dribbling just before the...
And what did you put first of all?
Well, there we go. Okay, so we'll take one from the BBC pre-race coverage. oh God, it's Nigel Mansell. Brundle was doing his pit walk and you pointed out that Jenson Button always sounds like he should probably just go and clear his throat. Yes. So I did that. And the thing is, then people react to it. Then Jerry Halliwell appeared, so I suggested it might be an international festival of irritants because we'd already had Jack Villeneuve on as well. Blah, de blah. And then I got a bit bored. And it's just nonsense. I mean, I won't read any more of these out because they're quite boring, really. But
you did start a sort of a thread.
And you've got all these people following you, and they're getting your feed, so they can then suggest things to you, and you can, as they call it, retweet. And I'm massively embarrassed about being involved in this whole thing. But
hey, I give it another 6 months.
Yes, well, exactly. That's fine. I'm prepared to make a sort of dignified withdrawal at that point. But
we're getting to the meat of it now.
Yeah, we're getting to the point. There's a point hoving into view. Martin Brundle said emulsion of oil on the track, and I suggested on my Twitter thing that sounded like a Depeche Mode B-side, and then Zog, in the room, like real people actually talking to, a human being, said that it actually sounded like a really lame Bond film. So I suggested, the race was going on a bit at this point, and I'm quite bored, so I suggested on the Twitter feed that if people suggest F1 related lame titles for Bond films, and whoever the people are following me on Twitter, hello to all of you. You're very, very funny.
Very funny.
Which is simultaneously a delight and quite depressing.
Let's read some of them. Read some of them. Go in time order if you can.
These things started coming in, and some of them are absolutely brilliant. Lame F1 titles for Bond films. Diffuser of Woe. If you're someone called Swish Relic on Twitter, that is brilliant. Steve Boswell, The Compound of Rubber.
Nice. It's got to be the something of something, isn't it?
Well, but some of the best ones.
Saxith suggested You Only Pit Twice.
I mean, you see, I reckon they are refeeding something we've done there, because that was actually a lyric in the Bond song that we did, the F1 Bond song, The Spy Who Laughed Me, towards the end at You Only Pit Twice.
Okay.
We sang at the end.
Fair enough. Okay, there's a guy called John Kell. This was my favourite until it was pipped by something I'll mention in a minute. But John Kell suggested Weber Say Weber Again. Brilliant.
That is my favourite, although I do also quite like the slightly, well, it's not a mixed metaphor, it's mixing your movies up here, mixing your genres, but Casino Square Royale with cheese. It's kind of Tarantino Bond
crossover.
Mark Minto suggested a PK of Solace, which does actually sound a bit like a Bond film.
A PK of Solace.
Well, a pico, of course.
A very small amount.
It's a nano,
yeah,
more or less.
Yes, that's right, I think, yeah.
Someone called WAP suggested the McLaren is not enough, which is quite but the winner, the one that I absolutely love, someone whose username on Twitter is just Orc, ORRC. I don't know what that means, but they suggested Max Mosley in The Man with the Swollen Bum.
Yes. And why would Max have a swollen bum? Thwacking, perhaps?
No reason at all.
No idea.
So anyway, I'm slightly embarrassed about the Twitter thing, but it seems to be going down quite well. But more than that, I think there's some really, really inspired comedy genii out there who are on this particular trendy website.
Well done. If you want to subscribe to the Sniff Petrol Twitter feed, it's twitter.com/Sniff Petrol. And the chances are, if Richard is hanging out with me and Zog and we're watching a race, it'll probably be our thoughts and not just Richard's, I would think. But yeah, you've been listening to Gareth Jones on Speed. He was Zog.
Goodbye.
He was Richard.
Goodbye.
And I was Gareth, not Florence Jones.
Contact the show on speed at garethjones.tv. Get lyrics, pictures and more information from www.garethjones.tv or subscribe for free at the iTunes store. Gareth Jones on Speed is made by Whizbang.